You may have courses that cross over multiple bucket areas. So you may have a class that's on gender studies, that's hitting on both humanities-related work and then also natural science or sociology, things of that nature. We really encourage that. We want you to get out and explore and try different things. One of our most popular majors, for example, is public health. A lot of folks, as they come from high school, there's no public health classes in high school that are taught in the way that they're taught in college. So a lot of our students come in thinking they might like natural science, but then they take a public health class, realize they can combine that interest with sociology, social justice, making community impacts, and then they fall into a major that's very interdisciplinary in that sense in public health. A lot of our students, again, find majors like that. They find multiple majors that they enjoy while they're here on campus. Leads to about 60% of our students double majoring or double minoring during their time here. A few who are really crazy will triple. But again, knowing that with the interdisciplinary system, there is no core curriculum here at Hopkins. Every class that you're going to take is going to count towards a degree requirement in some way, shape, or form as you progress through. So we encourage you to try things. If you fall flat on your face in the subject, like I did in organic chemistry, I was going to be a neuroscientist, and then I realized I was really bad at orgo. I wound up a history major. So then I went to grad school for education. So your path is very different, and that's the case for most students, statistically speaking. So we want to encourage that here. We want to make sure that you're able to fluidly transition between different topic areas and find out what really is your passion and be able to pursue that, and again, whether it's one or multiple. I'm sure you can talk with us as well to how you sort of found your major areas and your interests and how that plays out in the classroom too.
Yeah, one of the things that drew me to the public health major was that it is so interdisciplinary. So I was able to take classes in sort of like statistics, biology, those sort of like hard STEM science classes, but then also in like history, politics and policy, sociology, things like that. One of the best classes I've taken at Hopkins was called Environmental Change and Infectious Disease, which looked at sort of how land use change and climate change that like humans have sort of perpetuated has led to changes in global disease patterns, which I thought was a really interdisciplinary class. It combined all of my interests, and it sort of made me interested in environmental health as a subject and possibly as a career. So if I hadn't had the flexibility to explore all these different subject areas, I never would have found that passion.
Yeah, so again, playing out in the classroom every single day, you're going to continue to expand on that knowledge as you continue through, gain that well-roundedness, whatever that might look like in your specific area. And then the greater question of, you have all these skills in the classroom, that's awesome, you're continuing to learn new things. How do you take that out and actually apply it to real life so that you have some marketable skills as you leave this place in 4 years? So that plays out in a couple of different ways for us outside of the classroom. I did mention this at the start, but the biggest thing for us in that category is research for sure. So we are the nation's oldest research institution, again, the very first of our kind to be in that milieu. And then thinking about how that plays out in everyday life, we spend more on research as an institution than any other school in the world every year. Does anybody in the crowd want to take a guess on how much money Hopkins spent on research last year? Somebody just shout out a number. Yeah, go ahead.
2.2 billion.
Okay, that's higher than most people start, 2.2 billion, which actually, it's higher than that. But it's always like anticlimactic when people go over, you got really close. So it's within that 2 billion range. It is $2.56 billion last year. For context, that exceeds the next closest institution by over $1 billion. So it is a lot of money. You obviously, as a student, will not be encountering all $2.56 billion in your research life here on campus, as much as you might want to. But knowing that with that money, with that excessive amount of spending, leads to the fact that you're going to have unparalleled access to research here on campus from day one. So even if you have no research experience prior to applying, one caveat I always add, when I go out on the road, students worry, do I have to have research to be able to apply to Hopkins or to be competitive within the applicant pool? By no means do you have to do so. We recognize that depending on your given situation, it's very hard to access high-level research in high school. We do have some students who have that. If you do and you're sitting in the crowd, feel free to tell us about it in your application. We'll talk about that at the end as well. But if you're sitting in your seat and you're worried, no need for research when you apply. We will take you in on your first day and give you open access in a couple of different ways. You can go through the more formal channels with the offices like Hopkins Office of Undergraduate Research, or OUR for short. That's more of a formalized opportunity, like a job board where professors will post lab openings, you'll be able to apply and interview for them. The one that I preferred, which was much more informal, is just walking up to a professor after class and saying, hey, I really like the environmental studies that we're talking about, or the public health policy that we're talking about. Do you or anybody that you know of in the department have anything that you're working on that I could help out with and sort of be hands-on in? And regardless of whether or not that individual professor has something, again, because of the sheer amount of spending on this campus, they're gonna know somebody either here at Hopkins or in the area that we connect with that's gonna be able to link you up with a research opportunity. And something at that is not ground level. You're not gonna be the coffee runner or just the note taker in most situations. You're going to be able to have hands-on experiences within a lab and be able to, again, actually do something. So whether you decide to stick in one lab throughout all 4 years or try multiple labs, whatever that looks like for you is completely dependent. So knowing that about 80% of our students here on campus will be involved in some kind of formalized research opportunity means that if you don't like research, you don't have to do it. It's by no means a requirement for graduation, but it is something that is very core to our kind of identity as an institution. It's something that we encourage you to give a shot. Even if you find out that you don't like it, that's completely fine. The other caveat to add to this as well is I think when I came to college, I thought that research was very much just natural science focused things. People in white lab coats doing, pipetting and things like that. But knowing that, as a history major, I was able to access history research, being able to travel around the world and get involved in a number of different ways in doing historical research or linguistics research. Whatever it looks like for you, again, as a result of how much we put into research here on this campus, we have it existing in every single subject area. So knowing that if you are a white lab coat person, that's totally fine. We have plenty of opportunities for that. But if you're interested in humanities, if you're interested in the social sciences, we absolutely have openings in there as well for research and plenty of them. I don't know if you want to talk about specific research experiences for you or your friends as well, but...
Yeah, so I did research in a child development lab here at Hopkins. The way I got that opportunity was there's a department-wide newsletter that goes out to public health majors every week, and they always have research openings, so I saw one that looked interesting, emailed the professor. Within a few days, I was part of that lab. That was a really great experience. As I mentioned, it was child development research, so our subjects were like infants from 0 to 6 months old. So we brought them into the lab, did like developmental tasks with them, and then I really liked just like looking at data, analyzing data. So that was a really, I had never done research before coming to Hopkins, and I realized how much I loved it when I got here. But as Jeremy mentioned, that's by far not the only type of research that's offered here at Hopkins. I've had friends who are humanities majors who've done sort of like reading and analyzing articles from different publications. I had a friend who interviewed Asian Americans living in Baltimore about their experiences here. And then also I've had friends who've done like that hard scientific pipetting white lab coat type research. So sort of whatever your interest is, it's so easy at Hopkins to find a research position that suits that.
And just for context as well, I won't name the institution, but I did go to the #2 institution that's behind Hopkins in research spending. And from listening to the students and seeing the experiences every day on campus, I never had access to research in the ways that students here have access to research. So even speaking from the perspective of the school that is directly behind Hopkins, knowing that extra $1 billion, fairly helpful, believe it or not, in terms of opening opportunities. So just a little bit of context to add there too. Other things outside of research, particularly for those who may not be interested in research, and ways to meld it in different ways. A couple other opportunities to get outside the classroom include things like study abroad and internships. I think the big thing to think about with internships is that they take different forms for different people, but knowing that we're in a really advantageous location for it. So Baltimore being a major metropolitan city, we have a lot in our own backyard. We have T-Rowe Price down near the harbor. We have the Under Armour World headquarters. A lot of our material science majors and marketing and communications minors will go do internships down there in Locust Point. And also knowing that we have public transportation. I'm from the Midwest originally. We did not have public transportation. So unless you wanted to drive 3 hours to the nearest major city, you didn't have a lot of choices. But knowing that we have things like the MARC train to take you down to DC in about 45 minutes, to take you up to Philly and New York in about an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, depending on where you're going. All of those are access to research opportunities as well. Or if you're just trying to get out on the weekend, we'll talk about this with student life as well, and just hang out with friends. It's really exciting, especially as somebody who is not from an area with this kind of access to getting to different cities really quickly. In terms of accessing those research opportunities, it is really great. The way that you'll find those here on campus is also, again, pretty unique in different situations. So whether it be Handshake, which is the formalized internship website that we use here at Hopkins, at any given time there's about 7,000 different internships through that website. For context, our campus only has about 5,300 undergraduates, so there are always more internships posted than what we actually have students to fill. Or you'll find internship opportunities through random websites, through professors that have different friends who are doing different things. and being able to get involved in that way as well, whether it be for pay, for credit, for nothing in a lot of cases, or if you want to be able to travel as well, knowing that we do have funding to be able to send you across the country to promote internships. For example, if you want to go to Silicon Valley and work in computer science, it's one of the most expensive real estate markets in the country. So if you can't afford that $4,000 a month one-bedroom apartment, we'll be able to provide funding for that if you apply to be able to head out there and afford that unpaid internship at that computer tech startup. And then the last thing as well, again, study abroad, like I mentioned, I'm going to let Alyssa take most of this because she just came back from study abroad, but knowing that about 30% of our students will get involved in some sort of study abroad experience, whether that be during the regular academic year, going abroad for a semester or a full year, during the summer, during J-term, which I'll let you explain that as well, but a lot of different opportunities to be able to get out and explore globally. And if there's a partnership that we don't have already with the university that you want to make happen, you can do that. All you have to do is talk to the study abroad office. We had one of our students who wanted to go to Jamaica to do aquatic marine bio research. We didn't have a partnership with anybody in Jamaica. She went to the study abroad office. They were able to find a university to link her up with a professor. She was there for a whole semester, just came back over the winter break, which was really exciting. And she had that opportunity all because she had the initiative to go out and start that. So if you want to talk about your study abroad experience, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I studied abroad in Madrid last semester. As I mentioned, I am a Spanish major as my second major, so I really wanted that experience of being immersed in the culture and the language and being able to be at least most of the way fluent in the language by the time I graduated Hopkins. It's extremely easy to find a study abroad opportunity and make it work with your schedule. I didn't really think that I was going to be able to study abroad as a senior because I would have to be completing all my graduation requirements, making sure everything was all in place to graduate. But I went to the study abroad office, I talked to my public health major advisor, my Spanish major advisor, and they were like, yeah, definitely, you can definitely make this work. So the study abroad office advisor is extremely helpful. She walks you through the application process. She tells you everything you're going to need to do and to know before you go abroad. I would say it is an application process, but it's not competitive at all. I think everyone who applies does get accepted into whatever program they choose to apply for. The Madrid program is a Hopkins-sponsored program, so it's run by Hopkins. We have a partnership at the university in Spain where I was studying. I was with about 15 other Hopkins students. We all lived with host families in the city. We commuted to the campus, which was in a suburb a little bit away, every day to go to class. Then on the weekends, we would go on excursions around Spain. Everything was in Spanish, the classes, talking with my host family, the excursions that we did. So that was a really incredible experience that I don't think I would have gotten if I hadn't come to Hopkins.
Yeah, so a lot of opportunities again to get involved here on campus, going abroad, taking what you're learning in the classroom and being able to apply it. One thing to kind of close out academics, I know it sounds like a lot of information at the start, going from classrooms to research to internships to study abroad. As somebody who was a first-generation college student, if anybody else is sitting in the room, or just worried about this in general, how to navigate everything, how to figure out what to take advantage of, what to go for in terms of what you want your academic experience to be, what you want your experiences outside the classroom to be. Knowing that you have a really good core of advisors behind you here at Hopkins is really important to feeling comfort in figuring that out. So the way that that works is when you apply and you're accepted, before you come to campus, you're going to be assigned a general advisor. They'll walk you through sort of getting on campus, your first steps, setting up your first schedule, and there'll be sort of a contact that you have throughout your 4 years. Every time that you add a new major or minor too, you're going to get departmental advisors who are specifically within that field, so they'll have a better sense of more specifics to public health, to environmental science, to Spanish, and they'll be more in-depth in knowledge on how to take advantage of internship opportunities or study abroad within those fields. And you continue to kind of add to this Rolodex of people to help you out and sort of guide you through this 4-year experience here. So knowing that those folks are there, we are, again, a campus of about 5,300 undergrads. We bring in an incoming class of around 1,300 every year. So technically we're classified as a mid-sized institution, but it really does feel small. Being able to have access to professors like help us in grad school as well. Knowing that everything is very low in terms of teacher-to-student ratio, so you're going to have a lot of opportunities to connect with these folks and build those long-lasting relationships to be able to figure out what it is you want to do and where you want to go. Are there any questions so far on anything we talked about academics-wise? Again, try and keep the questions a little more broad, and then if you can be very loud when I call on you so I can hear you up here. Yes?
So for the research, is there on average how much time does a average student spend on, or does it vary between what type of research they do?
Sure, great question. So time commitments for research, what does that look like? Does it vary from project to project? I don't know if you want to hit on this specifically from your experience, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much whatever you want to make it. There is a certain number of hours required if you're going to get credit for research. I believe it's 40 hours a semester for 3 credits or something like that. But I think I did like maybe 5 hours a week at my research lab, but there are definitely people who go in for like 10, 15 hours a week if they're really into their research, or just like, 2 or 3 hours a week. It's really, there is a time commitment if you do want to get credit for it, but you can also opt not to get credit for it and just do it sort of for the experience. In that case, it's completely up to you.
Yeah, in the back left.
As an interdisciplinary school, do all students, particularly freshmen, have core classes that they must take? Or, because I know there's a growing trend of schools where you're offered much more flexibility, maybe everybody has to take a writing class, but everything else just depends on your interests.
Sure. So in terms of graduation requirements, what those look like, our first year students all taking specific classes. Just to reiterate from the general side on academics, there is no core curriculum for Hopkins, but if you want to talk to your specific schedule as well.
Yeah, so for your major, there's obviously going to be specific classes that you have to take, but there's no one class that every freshman has to take. There are humanities, natural sciences, social sciences, quantitative science requirements, and then a writing intensive requirement. So everyone's going to have to take some kind of writing class. Everyone's going to have to take a humanities class and a quantitative science class and a social science class, etc. But within those categories, it's extremely broad. I remember I took like a behavioral science class, and that was a writing intensive class. So even though it was like sort of a behavioral psychology science class, I got credit for my writing intensive credits. And then we do understand that, there are going to be people who don't really like humanities, who don't really like natural sciences or quantitative sciences. So there are classes geared towards people who need to get those requirements but aren't necessarily experts in that subject. So whatever your major is, you'll be able to easily complete those requirements and find classes that work for you.
Yeah. Awesome. So I do want to keep us moving towards your tours. Just as a reminder, I'll make myself available in the back. Hopefully we'll have a couple of minutes before your tour guides come in to dismiss. And then I'll also be at the desk when you all come back from tours. If you have any other questions, feel free to write them down and hold on to them. But moving forward to talk a little bit about student life, this is actually a great transition. We had talked a little bit about our commitments to things like research. Thinking about student life kind of at a wide lens, I always tell students when I'm on the road in high school is like, right now, those of you that are in high school, you're probably in the classroom roughly 40 hours a week, like 8 to 3. You probably have commitments after school for athletics, for student clubs, for work, for family commitments. All of those things piling together, your schedule's pretty laid out for you right now. When you get to college, you're gonna be in the classroom like maybe 15 hours a week, maybe. And so what my parents always asked was what I was gonna do with all of my free time when I got to college. For reference, it's not free time. You're gonna have a lot of work outside of the classroom, but knowing that you're gonna have the flexibility to be able to schedule your life. So what does that look like for our students both here on campus and as they go out into the city? The biggest things to think about in terms of student involvement is that we are a very student-initiated campus. I'll talk a lot about the fact that we look for initiative and impacting applications at the end of the presentation, but what we see on this campus all the time is students who are taking advantage of opportunities and building opportunities on their own as well. So all of our student organizations, we have over 400 here on Homewood, all of them are student-led, student-organized, student-initiated. Everything is, again, entirely run by students. So if you are in charge of like the spring speaker series, they control a budget of like $25,000. They choose who they want to bring to campus. It's all organized by a council of students. There's no faculty oversight or anything like that. In terms of student organization involvement, it's all across the board. If there is something that you are specifically interested in, feel free to look it up on Hopkins Clubs online. We have all of them categorized and laid out on the internet so you can see what already exists. If there's something you want to start here on campus that we don't have, all you need is, I think it's 5 friends and a faculty advisor. It's a very small number of friends and a faculty advisor. And then you'll have full-fledged access to student organization funding and institutional support. So for example, we had a student come in who was from Arizona, was native, and started the Native Students Organization here on campus. They saw that that was missing from here. They really missed that opportunity to connect with people who were like them and share their culture with others here on campus. They started that organization with 5 friends or whatever it was who were not Native. They just wanted to support her. And now we have annual powwows every year. We went to her powwow back in October. She brought in Native speakers and performing artists from around the country with a budget that the university gave her. And this was all one student's goal, to create that opportunity, and now it's something that's impacting our campus in the long run. So getting involved and knowing that that's all out there. A couple of common ones that folks ask about. In terms of athletics, we do have Division III at every level except for one sport. Does anybody want to yell it out? Lacrosse. I'm from the Midwest, so it was not a huge thing there. We moved to Maryland and everything is lacrosse related. We do have a game today against Syracuse as a pitch. If you want to go to Homewood Field, which is right on the north side of campus, it'll start at 1 o'clock after your tour wraps up. So if you're curious in catching some Hopkins lacrosse there, on a bit of a down year, but Syracuse is the #1 team in the country if you want to go see some really solid lacrosse action. We do also have Division III at every other level. We have club sports if you want to stay competitive, but not at the varsity level. We have intramurals. We do have Greek life as well. About 25% of our students, varying from year to year, are involved in some kind of Greek life. That encompasses both social Greek life, the more traditional understanding of it, as well as multicultural, service fraternities and sororities, and a few other aspects of Greek life as well. So it's definitely something to take advantage of if you want to, but it's not something that's overwhelming student experiences. They're going to talk to you about housing on the tour as you go through. You're going to see some of the residence halls that we have here on campus, but just as a couple quick hitters on that, we do require that you live on campus for the first 2 years. And then after that, the vast majority of our students do move off campus, but are living within like the 3 to 5 block radius around the Homewood campus. Sure.
Is housing guaranteed for 4 years?
So the question is housing guaranteed for 4 years? It is not guaranteed for 4 years, it's guaranteed for the first 2 years. And that's why the vast majority of our students do move off campus for years 3 and 4. You can always become an RA if you want to stay in the dorms and make an impact in your community. I did that, highly recommend it. It's a really fun experience as well. If you want to talk a little bit about some of the student work you're involved in too, feel free.
Yeah, sure. So one of the best things I think that I've been involved with at Hopkins is the Johns Hopkins newsletter, which is our campus newspaper here. I encourage you all to pick one up in the lobby on your way out today. But that is, so it's completely student run. So students are, writing the articles, deciding, what we're going to cover, laying out the paper, distributing the paper around campus. And even though it's not necessarily a structured internship research, that kind of opportunity, it is something that I feature heavily on every resume and job interview that I do. I was a news editor and a managing editor my sophomore and junior year. I was not able to be involved last semester because I was in Spain. But again, that's one of the most incredible things I've been involved in on campus. Some of my best friends I made through that organization. And it was, even though I'm not necessarily someone who wants to go into journalism as a career, it gave me sort of organizational skills, leadership, time management, conflict resolution skills that have been completely invaluable and that I think I'll use for the rest of my career.
So a lot of opportunities to get involved, in more frivolous activities as well, fun activities, things that you want to do in your free time, quote unquote. But thinking about kind of expanding outside of this Homewood campus as well. When you do your tour, if you haven't walked campus before, you're going to realize this is a pretty small space. You're going to be able to walk from the very south end of campus here to the very north end in about 10 minutes. So we want you to get outside of this campus bubble as well, be able to experience the city that you're living in. So if you're not familiar with Baltimore, talking a little bit about getting out within the city and experiencing what it has to offer. As somebody who moved here, again, talking from the experience of somebody who didn't grow up here and has gone out into the city to experience different things, some of my personal favorites as you get out and navigate, I'm a huge sports guy, so going to Ravens games, which is a little bit more expensive, going to Orioles games because they're terrible, so they're super cheap. I'm a Detroit Tigers fan, we're the only team that was worse last year. But I regularly go during the summer for anywhere between $5 and $7 to sit anywhere I want in Camden, which is one of the most beautiful ballparks in baseball. So being able to get involved in that, going down to the harbor front, going to the National Aquarium. One of the favorite student neighborhoods, you might talk about this in kind of your orientation of Baltimore as well, is Hamden. It's a really kind of, I don't know how you call it, eclectic neighborhood, very artsy, lots of smaller shops, restaurants. My favorite ice cream in Baltimore is the Charmery as well. They do some really unique flavors like Chinese food in the movie, which is popcorn and fortune cookie ice cream. Very interesting. But again, knowing that you have a lot of opportunities to get out and explore this city that we live in. So thinking about Baltimore in terms of some things that I really like about it personally as well, just diversity. I come from a very homogenous area where everybody looks the same, acts the same, talks the same. So knowing that you're in a city that has a really great sense of diversity, there's a lot of different opportunities to go out and explore different cultures, different events that go on in the city. I love eating, and so being able to go to different foods that I never had before. I had Bengalese food for the first time a few weeks ago, and that was incredible. Those are things that I never had access to. So kind of those small things that I've really come to enjoy as somebody who's living here, and continuing to get out and explore the city and get outside again of this campus bubble. I don't know if you want to talk about how you specifically get out in the city and things that students like to do, because I'm aging myself, but I'm not really a student age anymore, so
Yeah.
The hip things, the cool kid things.
So as Jeremy mentioned, Hamden really holds a special place in my heart. I actually used to work in a small local business there, which I think speaks to the fact that Hopkins students are really involved in what's going on in the Baltimore community and not just on campus. Some of my other favorite things to do in Baltimore are go see a movie at the Charles, which is independent theater, just down the street. You can get there by public transportation, the free shuttle that Hopkins offers. Also, the Walters Art Museum is a really great free art museum in Mount Vernon, which is another really amazing neighborhood. The BMA, which is right next door to us, is also a free art museum, the Baltimore Museum of Art. Again, going out to explore different restaurants, going to the Inner Harbor. I would say it would be a big mistake to come to Hopkins and not try to explore Baltimore as much as possible, because I'm personally from a pretty small town, so coming to a city, being in an urban environment for the first time was really incredible, and it definitely, one way to make the most of your time here is to get involved in what's going on in Baltimore and not just staying on campus.
And as a university, we're going to encourage you as well to get out in the city in a couple of different ways. So when you come for your freshman orientation, which at Hopkins is right after you move into your freshman housing at the end of August, we have Baltimore Day as part of your orientation, where we break you up into small groups. You go out into the city with different city guides. They show you different opportunities within the city. They show you how to navigate our shuttle systems. They also tell you things like, for us from small towns, how to navigate a big city, things to do, things not to do. I'm very used to leaving my doors unlocked, or like leaving my laptop in the back seat of my car is a thing that I'm known for doing. So just big city things that you might not want to do that I could get away with in a small city. And we'll take you out and we'll show you how to navigate and how to live here and how to be able to access a lot of these different opportunities that we're talking about. So not only do we encourage you, we're going to actually take you out as an institution and make you go explore the city to be able to figure out how to do that. So really exciting things. A couple other things about Baltimore as well. You may have noticed if you drove in, the Welcome to Maryland signs, they say we're open for business. This is a great entrepreneurial city. So we do see a lot of applications. So I know a lot of you in the room probably have some kind of entrepreneurial experience, starting your own businesses, nonprofits. This is a great city to continue to do that in. On that being open for business vibe, we are very entrepreneurial. We have different incubators that are attached to campus. So things like Fast Forward U, which is right down the street from us here, about 2 blocks. Those are incubators where if you have a small business idea that you want to start, they'll take you in for a semester or a year. They'll work with you on marketing. They'll work with you on research and design and development, and they'll continue to hone that product for you, which is a really great partnership that we have. We had a couple of students who started a group last year. They were very much nerds, and they designed an intestinal lining for surgeries so that when they're poking around in your intestines, they don't perforate them, which is a bad thing apparently. But being nerds, they didn't know how to do business. They knew how to design their product, they knew how to make it scientifically feasible, how to make it safe in hospitals. They took it to this incubator and they worked with them for a whole year on how to take it out into the market, how to sell it to different medical institutions, how to really make it from just a project into an actual business. So knowing that those opportunities exist for you as well, they left this institution, they graduated last year, they just sold their business for about $15 million. If they had student debt, they don't anymore, which is really exciting. So knowing that if you have that entrepreneurial mindset, this is a great city to be able to take advantage of that too. There are a lot of really great advantages to take in terms of tax credits and things like that for businesses that are a little bit more minute. But knowing that if you have that mindset, it's something that's definitely available for you. Thinking as well on the front of overall outcomes. So we've talked a little bit about academics, we've talked a little bit about getting out of the classroom, being here on campus, how everything is kind of snowballing into what a lot of parents ask as the final question, and I know my parents asked a lot, was what's my return on investment? It's obviously going to be a huge investment to send your student to any institution. So what are the outcomes for our students that are leaving Hopkins here? In terms of kind of pathways after you leave here in 4 years, some statistics behind that, about 35% of our students will go on to some type of graduate school or a continuing degree, whether that be some of the more popular ones like medical school, engineering, graduate business degrees. And then about 55% of our students will enter the workforce. These are 6 months out from graduation statistics. Most popular areas for the workforce are things like med tech, engineering, business as well, consulting. What better job than telling other people how to do their job better? So we have a lot of students who get into consulting as well. And then the remaining 10% account for a lot of different things. Students who take gap years. How many folks are interested in medical school? Okay, a good number. A lot of times they'll encourage you to take a gap year as you're applying to medical school, because if you don't, you're locking yourself in a classroom from the time you were in preschool or kindergarten until the time you're like 30 years old. So they'll encourage you to take a year, go explore, do something fun while you continue to apply to institutions. So that accounts for some of that 10%. Also, those kids who started their own business and sold it for $15 million. Those kids don't count because they're technically not in the workforce per our statistics. They started their own business and they're their own bosses. So there are some really great outcomes for the students, and being able to access the alumni network as well as you leave is something that I'm able to take advantage of too. When I go out on the road and give these presentations, I bring alumni from all across the country. When I'm in Chicago, I have a great married couple who met here on campus and they adopted their dog in Baltimore, and they come with their dog to the presentations. And they talk a lot about their personal experiences too. The alumni network is vast, and there's always people out there who are willing to help you and talk to you as you work your way through. And then the last thing about how to kind of navigate as you leave this campus is talking about our Life Design Lab. So for those of you who have traveled to different institutions, they might have talked about the Career Center. The Life Design Lab is basically Hopkins obliterating the Career Center and turning it into something completely different. So parents who went to college, you might be able to attest to this. If your campus had a Career Center, it was probably very focused on just getting you that first job as you were leaving. And then as soon as you got that first job, you were good with the Career Center and you moved on. Are any of you in the room in the same field that you intended to be in when you left college? Maybe some, probably not for most. I do see a hand in the back, that's awesome. Statistically speaking, about 70% of folks will leave the field that they studied in undergrad. So again, I got into education through a history major. So what the Life Design Lab is designed to do is to help you start thinking critically about how you're going to not only navigate that first pivot after you leave campus, but how you're going to navigate all the pivots of life after that. So it's a resource that's going to be available to you after you graduate for as long as you live. They will talk to you about things like figuring out what your passions are. They'll talk to you about the 5-year job crisis that a lot of people face, where they get 5 years into their career and they're not very fulfilled by what they're doing. And how do you figure out what that next step is going to be? What do you really want to do? What is your passion? Are you in consulting because you actually like the work that you're doing, or are you in it because you love traveling? Then what do we think about other opportunities where travel is a key aspect of your job? So it's a really cool opportunity to continue to explore yourself as you continue through life. So knowing that Hopkins here, again, you're going to gain a lot of skills that you're going to take on the market in 4 years, but knowing that you have resources back here on Homewood as you continue throughout your career and throughout the rest of your life, to be able to consult with people here on campus about how you want to navigate that space, how you want to develop yourself professionally and personally, and how you're going to be the most fulfilled person as you leave this place and continue forward in life. So that is getting its first brick and mortar building at the start of this coming academic year. So if you are applying to Hopkins next year, you're really going to be on the ground level of this Life Design Lab. You're going to be able to provide a lot of insight and a lot of recommendations on what that should look like as it continues through its lifespan. So it is something that is very cool. We have Dr. Farouk Day, who's starting that here. We poached him from Stanford University where they started this. And it's a really exciting thing. Feel free to read about it online or check out the book Designing Your Life. That's what it's all based off of as well, bringing design thinking to kind of life trajectories. But in terms of outcomes, that's kind of the general gist. Being very excited about you all coming in and then thinking about the 4 years and then after that as well. I don't know if you have anything that you want to add as well about kind of wrapping up student life, anything on that front.
Yeah, I'll just talk about sort of my post-graduation plans, I guess. So coming into Hopkins, I had no idea what I wanted to do, no idea what I even wanted to major in. And sort of through taking classes, talking to professors, talking to my advisor, I learned about, there was a program, there's a 5-year BA MHS program with the School of Public Health. So that's 5 years, you get your undergraduate degree and then a master's degree. So I applied to that the summer after my junior year. I worked with one of my professors who sort of answered all my questions. She's actually one of the heads of that program at the School of Public Health here at Hopkins. So she was able to help me through that process. And so I was accepted, and I will be doing that Master's in Health Science and Environmental Health and Engineering next year at the School of Public Health. So I'm staying in Baltimore. I loved it so much that I didn't want to leave. I'm staying at Hopkins, and I'm really excited to know what I want to do sort of and start this next phase of my life.
Awesome. Any final questions here before we move into admissions financial aid? I'll warn you, this is your last chance to ask Alyssa any questions specifically about the student experience, so maybe prioritize those, and then you can ask me any questions specific to admissions or anything about that after. Sure, in the front.
How many dining halls are there, and how diverse is the food?
Sure, how many dining halls?
So there's the Fresh Food Cafe, which is the main freshman dining hall. There's Levering, which is sort of more like sophomore upperclassmen dining hall. There's Nolan's, which is located in one of the sophomore dorms. And then there are a number of sort of like cafes on campus, and there are a lot of restaurants sort of off campus as well. So I would say whatever kind of food you're craving at a time, there's going to be an option for that somewhere. In the main freshman dining hall that you're probably going to be going to most often, the menu changes every day. It's sort of buffet style. So there are a lot of different options like for every meal, and then every day they switch it up. So I would say the food is definitely very diverse.
And you can check out the menus 10 days to 2 weeks in advance for every dining hall. So if you're concerned about nutritional information or dietary restrictions, you can always check those out as well. Yeah.
What's the stance on service? Like, is it required? Or...
Service, sure. So what the stance is on service organizations and things like that. Do you want to talk about service organizations?
Yeah, there's no sort of like community service requirement or anything like that, but community service is one of the biggest things that people get involved with at Hopkins. There are sort of countless service organizations, whether you want to work as sort of like a tutor and work with students in the Baltimore community. There's also jail tutorial, where students go into prisons in Baltimore and work with the inmates there, tutoring them. There are you can work with an advocacy organization in Baltimore. You can do like environmental advocacy, cleaning up parks, cleaning up the harbors and ponds and lakes and things like that. There's a Center for Social Concern, which is an office that sort of oversees all the service organizations. So if you're interested in service at Hopkins, you can get in touch with them, and they will help match you with whatever either service organization at Hopkins or in the Baltimore community that best suits your interests.
So I mentioned we have 400 student organizations. About 50 of those are service-oriented organizations. So there are a lot of available opportunities for that. We'll take one more question for Alyssa. Yeah, sure.
You mentioned J-term. Could you explain what that
Yes, yeah, we didn't expand on J-term. So what is J-term and how do students navigate that?
Yeah, so traditionally known as J-term at Hopkins, we call it intersession. Those are the 3 weeks between Christmas break and the start of the spring semester. So I believe from like the second week in January to the last week in January. It's a period where you can take classes, pass, fail. There are a lot of really cool classes that are offered during that 3-week period. I've taken a lot of really interesting ones, such as Intro to Philosophy of Food, a particle physics class, which is really interesting, a class called Cooking the Books, where we looked at old cookbooks that we have here in the Rare Books Library at Hopkins, so getting to like handle those books and look at old recipes from hundreds of years ago was really cool. But then you can also do an internship during those 3 weeks. You can do research. You can just come back to Hopkins and hang out with your friends and not worry about having classes. Or you can just stay at home because it's not a required thing that you have to do. So anything you want to do during those 3 weeks, it's up to you.
Cool. If we can give Alyssa a round of applause, we're going to clap her. We'll see her for the tours as we wrap up here in a few minutes, but I'll take that one from you. I'll do it on the stand. But yep, and then Alyssa gets to make the long march to the back. And again, you'll see her in a few minutes. So kind of wrapping up here, thinking about the admissions and financial aid process. I tend to give a fairly general overview because we do tend to have the most questions in this section. So again, as an admissions officer speaking specifically to our policies and how things work here on campus, I'll give you the brief run through and then I'll talk about kind of the 3 things that we look for as you read your application. So to give you a broad overview of admissions, we run on 2 deadlines as an institution, pretty black and white. So for incoming freshman students, we do regular decision and early decision. Early decision is the binding agreement that says I've looked at every school, I've looked at financial aid, I've visited campus, I know Hopkins is my first choice, and if I'm admitted through the early decision deadline, I agree to attend the institution. You're only allowed to do that for 1 school every year, so again, make sure that this is your first choice before you do that. But that deadline every year is right around November 1st. We send out those decisions every year in mid-December. It's a really great opportunity, again, if you know it's your first choice, to be able to be done with the college search process by the time you go home for winter break. But again, we always do encourage you to make sure that all of those things do line up before you make that decision. If you want to have some more flexibility, if you want to look at other institutions, knowing that regular decision is an option as well. We're in the middle of our regular decision period right now. It's almost done. That deadline is right around January 1st, 2nd every year. We send out those decisions mid-March. For those of you, I know we had one family in the room that I talked to on the way over who did apply already. Those decisions for this year's regular decision are coming out next Friday at 3 o'clock. So we are almost through with filling our class for next year, which is very exciting. But those decisions follow pretty much the same schedule every year. If there are any transfer students in the room, Those deadlines are a little bit different. That's March 1st. If you have any specific transfer questions, feel free to ask me after, but that's a little bit more of a unique process for those students. Thinking about what we ask for within those applications, so running it down the list. It's going to be a regular application itself, the application form. We use both the Common App and the Coalition app. We default to whatever your school prefers. So if you want to apply to unlimited institutions, I learned this year that the Coalition lets you apply to as many as you want. The Common App caps you at 20. So if you want to apply to more than 20 schools, I don't recommend it for most people, but you can use the Coalition for that. They are the same app essentially to us. We read them the same way, so we have no preference. We also are looking for your test scores, things like your ACT and SAT. We do super score those, so if you took multiple iterations and did better on the subsections, feel free to submit both of those scores to us and we will give you your best composite overall. Some folks have been asking about the ACT change that's coming up in the fall. For those of you that are not aware, the ACT has decided that they are going to allow students to take specific subsections of the exam over again. So say you did really well on everything except math, you can retake just the math portion of the exam starting this fall. So we don't have an official policy on that yet, but my guess is that it's going to be very similar to the super scoring policy where you can submit those single subsections to us and we will super score. But keep an eye out for official policy on that coming this summer. Thinking about things outside of that, your transcripts, letters of recommendation, we require 2 teachers and a counselor letter of rec. I do recommend using teachers that have seen you recently, although a 9th grade teacher is great. It's been a while probably since they've seen you and they might not remember everything about you, so we do recommend a teacher who has seen you fairly recently. We will still accept 9th grade teachers, just something that we like students to be aware of. Big plug for those of you sitting in the room who haven't applied yet, start those conversations with your teachers that you might want to use in your counselor now. It's really annoying for them when you come in 2 weeks before and you're like, I need a letter of recommendation. So start those conversations so that they can think about, looking at you as a whole individual, what they might want to write about as they continue that process, and also just making it less awkward when you come to them, again, right before the application deadline and ask for that letter of rec next fall. So just a couple of plugs there that we get consistently from counselors and teachers on the road that save them a lot of hassle. They are doing you a favor, so try and do them a favor as well and be cognizant of their time. And then a couple of other things, just wrapping up the application as well. We do have a supplemental essay here at Hopkins. I'll talk about that in just a moment when we talk about the 3 things that we're looking for in your application. But knowing that we do have a supplemental essay that you will write specifically for us that focuses on collaboration. So what we're looking for when we read is kind of threefold. So one is academic character. We are looking at things like your test scores, like your transcripts. We're looking at you are a maximum reader in your school, that you're doing well, that you're taking all of the opportunities that are available to you within your specific school. But at the same time, we're also looking for more qualitative understandings of you as an individual. So we're looking at those letters of recommendation, talking about what kind of student you are in the classroom. If you're just a straight A student, that's great, but we want to know how you operate in the room. Are you a leader in the classroom? Are you inquisitive? Are you a good teammate? All those things come through in those letters and give us a little bit more context to the grades that we're seeing on the page. So all of that together kind of makes up the academic character portion. 2, I mentioned this earlier as well during the student groups, we are looking for impact and initiative in your application, so that typically comes through in things like your extracurriculars. We want to see that you're involved in something and that you're involved in it to a good degree. So whether that be athletics, clubs, family responsibilities, part-time jobs, we want to see all of that come through in your application and know that you are impactful in your community and in your school, and that you are doing things that are relevant to your interests or not relevant to your interests, whatever those may be, and making sure that you're maximizing those opportunities as well. Because knowing, again, when you come to campus, you're going to be in a very student-initiated space with our student organizations. We want to know that you're able to take advantage of those opportunities without a lot of oversight. And then lastly, thinking about the overall match to the institution. This is where sort of the collaboration essay comes in. So it's sort of the summation of everything in that application. Whether or not we think the academics, the impact and initiative, and then who you are as an individual all matches what the institution is looking for. So the supplemental essay about collaboration is going to tell us, are you a good teammate? Have you been able to work with somebody? All we're asking for is just telling us about a time that you collaborated, what you learned from it, and how you hope to carry that experience forward. So thinking about that critically and being able to tell us about that essay. If you want to go on our website and read what good essays look like, we are one of the few schools that offers that. So go to Essays That Worked on Johns Hopkins. Great site to be able to read not only accepted students' essays, but also our admissions counselors' comments about them. So you can read them and see what we like specifically so that you can tailor your own writing, which is a really, really helpful tool regardless of whether or not you're applying here or anywhere else. So that's kind of the general gist. Those are the 3 things: that academic character, the impact and initiative, and then the overall match and fit to the institution. And then the last thing to talk about really quickly is our financial aid process here on campus. So I encourage you to think about financial aid early and often. A couple of different tools to be able to do that are through the net price calculator, federally mandated for every school to have. It's going to be very specific to the institution. It'll give you a good ballpark estimate of what you can expect your estimated family contribution to be. We also have the My Intuition Quick Cost Calculator, which is a little bit more informal to give you a slightly wider ballpark. That is Hopkins only. That's also on our financial aid website, and it takes a little bit less time, but it is still a good estimate on the financial aid front. Hopkins financial aid, as of 2018, late 2018, got really, really good, courtesy of a really generous donation from one of our alumni, Michael Bloomberg, who gave over $1 billion of his own money to the institution to fund a number of different things within financial aid. So it really accounts for three things now. For all domestic U.S. citizens, permanent residents, DACA, and undocumented students, we are now three things. We are need blind, so we don't see in your application if you are in need of financial aid, and we don't account for that in our admissions decision about you. Two, we are 100% need met, which means when you get that estimated family contribution number from financial aid office after you submit your tax forms and your CSS profile and your FAFSA, your federal aid application, we cover 100% of the difference between that estimated family contribution and the full sticker price of Hopkins. So if the full sticker price is around $72,000 a year, your estimated family contribution is $20,000 a year, Hopkins will cover the remaining $52,000 with a combination of grants and scholarships. So money that you don't have to pay back. Which is the third part, we are now no loan. So we are not offering loans as part of our financial aid packages. The hope is that we have almost no students taking loans to get through their education undergraduate year. But the one case in which you may need to take one is if your estimated family contribution is more than your family can realistically contribute in a given year. Then you're eligible for those federal loans or private loans depending on what your situation is. And if you want to start that conversation early, Hopkins has prospective financial aid counselors that you can talk to. So if you want to contact their office, they are more than happy to discuss specific family situations even before you apply. So knowing that all those resources are available to you to get that really good sense of what you might be able to expect once you're admitted, and your financial aid decision will come with you when you're admitted. So that's kind of the gist of admissions financial aid in a nutshell. We have just a couple of minutes before the tour guides come down to take you away. I have time for maybe 2 or 3 questions if we have any. Yes? Sure, so merit-based scholarships was the question. We do have a few, we don't have a lot. To give you a sense from last year, about 10% of our incoming class received some form of merit aid. Most of the merit aid was rolled over into the need-based model that we have now because, to be honest, every kid that we're admitting is deserving of aid. And so we essentially rolled that over into need-based so that not only all the smart kids who can afford it can come, but all the smart kids in general. So there is some, but not a ton. Yep.
Do we need to submit SAT subject tests?
Good question. So SAT subject tests are entirely optional here at Hopkins. There is no hidden language. They're not recommended. They're not, optional, but like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you took them and you think they are a good indicator of your academic capability, you're more than welcome to send them as a part of your application. But knowing that it is optional, we typically will only see scores above 700s on those. So if you took them and you think they're a good indicator, feel free. If you didn't, we're not comparing you to students who did. Got time for one more question before the tours come down. In the back. Yep.
When you said early decision, you can only apply to one, does that exclude or preclude applying to a public university since you guys are private? And the second part, study abroad, is the cost of that included in the tuition package or is that separate?
Sure, so I'll hit both parts really quick. The first question was early decision. Does that preclude you from applying to a public institution early decision? So early decision is a one-time deal. If there are schools around the country, public or private, that offer early decision, you can only apply to one. There are schools that offer things like early action, which are non-binding. They're still early decision deadlines, but they are not binding agreements. So you can apply to a school early action, but you can only apply to one school early decision, if that makes sense. So the early action deadline exists in a lot of schools as well. It's non-binding, but you'll still get your decision early. And then the second part was around study abroad and the cost of study abroad. During the regular academic years, so during the traditional like fall and spring semesters, the cost of your study abroad program will not exceed the cost of your tuition and fees here at Hopkins. So your Hopkins tuition and fees will cover whatever your programmatic tuition and fees are at your foreign institution. It's a little bit different in the summer, but because it's typically a shorter time period, it's cheaper anyways, and there are a lot of scholarships and grants available to apply for in that situation. So that's all we have time for before the tour guides come down here in just a second. Again, I'm going to make myself available